right, we're in the town of Knysna. Now, this is a city which here in the Western Cape has been a coalition-governed city. And I think we need to have that conversation with the residents of Knysna, especially as the Western Cape may become, as a province, a coalition province. That is the DA right now, which is the majority party in this part of the world, is facing the real prospect of actually losing its majority in the province, thereby prompting them to look for perhaps a coalition partner. So we're going to have that conversation insofar as the residents here in Knysna who are governed under a coalition of the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance and EFF. What is their experience being of a coalition? Do they therefore look forward to the province potentially becoming coalition run? Indeed, even the country facing the prospect of becoming a coalition. That is the conversation here in Knysna. Coalitions, coalitions, coalitions. The good, the bad, the ugly. What do people here think about them? And in addition to that, are they still excited about the prospect of voting? Are they registered to vote? And what can South Africa be? This is the What South Africa Can Be tour in conjunction with the Institute of Race Relations. Remember, you can follow us and follow the conversation by using hashtag WhatSACanBe and follow Big Daddy Liberty, of course, on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, and on TikTok. And also, hey, follow the Institute of Race Relations. Let's get that conversation going. So the conversation begins now with a representative, someone who belongs to an organization of Knysna residents who decided, hey, why complain? Why bitch and moan about the way things are under the coalition here in Knysna? Let's actually get involved, do something about it. And indeed, it's that Mazakele culture that I often speak about, people who are choosing to build things and do things for themselves. And we're going to have that conversation, as I said, with Pierre van Billion, who is from Help Knysna, a community-based organization. Pierre, thank you so much for having a chat with us. Let me begin here. What is Help Knysna? Why did it even come about in a beautiful town like this one?
Help Knysna essentially was an organization that kind of grew organically, but almost by accident. I'm fairly new to Knysna, and over December, let me fill you in completely. So my partner and I moved down in August of last year. We walked away from Joburg because of the collapse that have taken place there. Invested quite heavily in Knysna, only to then realize once we were down here that we were facing the same kind of troubles. So in December, in a moment of anger, I posted a couple of comments on a WhatsApp group. And literally within 3 days, that WhatsApp group exploded to over 2,500 people. So the point is, clearly there was a fair amount of identification coming from the people that reside in Knysna, identifying with what I was saying. So initially we decided that we were going to try and basically just sort the nonsense out. It was a huge undertaking, and then as the thing progressed, we started to realize more and more that there were already quite a few residents and quite a few groups within Knysna trying to tackle the same problem, but there was no unification or focus in terms of resources. So that's just a very brief rundown as to who we are and what we do. We work very, very closely with the municipality. We've got very, very good relationships with the people on the ground. We've also got very, very good relationships in the various demographics. We've got people in Hornley, we've got people in Kayaletu, and we pretty much go in everywhere. Wherever there's problems, we'll go in and try and fix them.
I'm going to preempt a few things you're going to say here, but let me begin where I think it all begins, right? Which is clearly there was a problem. Now, Knysna is one of those municipalities in the Western Cape that after the 2021 local government elections found itself effectively with a hung council. Now, I'm not going to go into the details. I'll do that elsewhere insofar as what the political makeup is, who are the players, etc., etc. We'll cover that in the next segment. I think what was important, though, is immediately there were expectations from Knysna residents around what coalition governments potentially could be for them. versus the reality, unfortunately for them, which you guys are now, as an organization, a civic organization, are grappling with. Let's talk about that, because I think that's the broader conversation of the episode we're doing about the Western Cape. There is a prospect here that the province too will head towards some form of coalition arrangement. Let me ask the most obvious question. If I were to ask if I were to ask 10 residents of Knysna what their impression of coalition governance is, what sort of response do you think am I going to get?
Not a very good one. Look, I'll go so far as to say that if you asked any resident a political question, you're probably going to get thrown out. Okay. The long and the short is the icing on the cake didn't turn out to be as sweet as it was made out to be. Look, I think if one looks at the very nature of coalitions, it's not conducive to decent governance. And the reason that it's not is because I believe it's self-serving. It doesn't represent the demographic of the residents. Okay, especially with what happened here. There was a municipality that was voted in. There was a vote of no confidence, and then the next voting stage essentially got rid of the people that were voted in, and without a proper by-election, the coalition was just brought in, and that's the danger that we face. So in terms of once again the demographics, the demographics are not portrayed realistically. Okay. Then you've got a lack of cohesion as far as policy is concerned. All one needs to do is have a look at the council meetings and to see the chaos that some of these meetings descend into. So we could wax lyrical about the pros and cons, or rather just the cons as far as I'm concerned, of coalition government. But no, in terms of the people here, don't ask, because you're not going to get a good answer.
All right, so we pick up the conversation about the collapse of Knysna and indeed the story potentially of what coalitions can look like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Knysna perhaps falling into the latter two categories there of the bad and the ugly. Let's get a sense, though, of what that actually means in real terms. Again, Knysna, this pristine, wonderful Southern Cape town, known for the tourism, known for the delicious oysters. And yes, the Jew said that. I don't eat oysters, but I'm sure they're delicious. And we're sitting here with, as I said, Mark Willemse, who is a councillor in this part of the world, someone who's actually been the head honcho in council here before as mayor, now wearing the tunic, if I can call it that, of the Knysna independent movement. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Honored to be here with you.
Look, I'm going to jump straight into it because, there is a story to be told about Knysna. Knysna is almost the litmus test of what coalition politics can and likely will look like in the Western Cape going forward. If you look at any of the snap polling that speaks to potentially where things are at the moment, the dominant party in this part of the world, the Patriotic Alliance, is facing a lot of pressure. It might very well find itself falling to the sort of 48-47% mark, needing another party, a smaller party, saying that without any disrespect, to get it over the threshold, presuming, of course, those smaller parties side with the DA. Now, I don't really want you to opine so much on the nitty-gritties of, he said, she said, coalition politics, but there is as I said, Knysna is almost the litmus test, the petri dish, if you will, of what coalition politics has looked like. Mark, you're in the belly of the beast. Let's talk about the politics. What have things looked like since the ANC EFF PA coalition?
Well, you've used the analogy of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And unfortunately, there is very little good, and it's mostly bad and ugly. If you look at the poor decision-making, poor governance, which has all led to a downfall in service delivery. At the end of the day, that's what people look at.
Yep.
That's what the ratepayers want to see, because they are paying X amount of dollars every month to get a certain amount of value for that.
That's right.
And that's what's failing at the moment, because it's poor decision making. And the decision making stems not sometimes from the local politicians. They're having their strings pulled by provincial and national powers that be. So in essence, Knysna suffers at the end of the day. And I'm referring to not only one party in particular. It happens with all parties. Unfortunately, the DA is on the wrong side of the coin here at the moment. And we were in coalition with them for a short period of time. And it was very difficult. That fell apart, and the current ruling coalition of the ANC, the EFF, and the PA, and a smaller local party, the PBI, are ruling the roost at the moment. And that's why Knysna's in the news, unfortunately. And it's through very unfortunate circumstances that Knysna's in the news, because it's all the bad news and the wrong news. And that's what we don't want.
Let's actually dig into that. What have the headlines been saying? Because that's what residents have been facing. So what's been happening here? We've been talking about bodies found in water reservoirs, putrefying to an extent. Refuse collection not happening, piles of rubbish. Now, again, you listen to this and I mean no offense saying this, but it is what it is, like the sky is blue. You often associate that with other provinces, for example, where this is unfortunately becoming the new norm of rubbish piling up, sewage issues, etc., etc. One doesn't associate that kind of stuff with Knysna, but here we are talking about the stuff. What has life been like for the average Knysna resident?
Very frustrating, to say the least. Unfortunately, there's been a trend over the years where things have got worse and worse and worse. And Knysna sits on a knife edge when it comes to the demographics, where it's predominantly being a white, aged population, quite influential and affluent, but that is changing. That demographic is changing. And with that comes a whole different dynamic. The appointments that are made within the council, within the municipality, are no longer merit appointments. They are appointments based on party affiliations, catered deployment, etc., and what they can bring to the so-called table. And that has a big influence on service delivery, where you do not have the competent skills anymore, which has led to our garbage, solid waste not being collected on time, and the issues that go around that because no maintenance planning has been put in place. So it is the poor management, which has stemmed from poor appointments by council, which has led to a lot of the systemic downfall. And voters are seeing that, and they're seeing that catered deployment is rife. And that is what people are beginning to understand about coalitions, that it's no longer whether you vote for the ANC or the DA, it's how everybody gets together at the end of the day and what the effect on a municipality that has. Because it doesn't matter who runs the municipality from an administrative point of view, it's how it's controlled by the politicians at the end of the day.
Even as I'm hearing you say this, I want to drill down on this before we sort of head to the final two questions. I think you're quite right in saying that there are different versions of Knysna to an extent. There are the pristine, touristy, to an extent, affluent areas, and there are townships here. Hornley is one that comes to mind. If you're a resident of Hornley, a resident of some of the other townships here, what has life like been for you? Often when we talk about service delivery failure, it's often the poorest who are the first who bear the brunt of maladministration and the like. What are the top issues faced here?
Yeah, well, the top issues there, Sithile, is basically you're looking at the basics, the absolute basics of water, electricity, sewage, and either the lack thereof or with the sewage overflowing of it. So those are the issues that, and let me put it to you this way, Hornley is mostly a formal suburb. It's not as informal as a lot of our northern areas, where there are generally a lot more informal settlements. So an area like that is established during the apartheid years when everybody was moved there, had a fair amount of formal infrastructure, but it's just never been maintained. And that is where the people are now suffering, because water losses, pipes are bursting. It's old ferro-asbestos pipes that are bursting, have never been replaced. Reservoirs are poorly maintained with pumps, etc. Sewage is overflowing because the stormwater drains are blocked. And because of the topography of Knysna is built on slopes. People at the bottom of the slopes suffer. And that's where a lot of the damage is caused. And through the years, just nothing has been done about it. Whether it's the DA, whether it's the ANC, everything gets overlooked where it's not needed, if you can want to, for want of a better phrase. So it's very difficult for the people in the townships to say, well, the DA did this for me or the ANC did this for me, because nothing's been done. And they are the ones that suffer at the end of the day because of poor planning and poor lack of understanding of circumstances. Because that's what politicians, they don't really understand what's going on down there. They don't live in those squalor circumstances, unfortunately, and fail to understand what really is needed on the bottom end of the scale.
Maybe as we taper off our conversation, because you paint, I think, an apt picture of how bad things are, and perhaps this is where I'm going to ask you to look into the crystal ball slightly and maybe extrapolate these issues at a provincial level, because that's what this election on the 29th of May will be about. This is the What South Africa Can Be tour that we're currently on, and we're asking people two questions really. The first is, are they registered, are they excited to vote, which is where we began our conversation, and with that vote, what can South Africa be? Now, looking at what Knysna has been under a coalition government, and there being the prospect of a coalition government in the Western Cape as a province, what could the Western Cape be under the various iterations of coalition that could happen here? And what do you think residents think about that, number one? And I'm going to ask you on a personal level, with your vote and what you want, what can South Africa be? But let's talk about the politics of the province. What could it be, and what is the good, bad, or ugly scenario that you envision?
Look, it's very difficult. As you rightly say, polling shows one way, but when it comes to the 29th, we'll only know the day after. But from a pragmatic point of view, one would have to look at what are the successes of the province to date. And there is fairly good governance from the current provincial government. And they are doing the best they can with the funding they get from national, because that's what they live on. They don't have any other funding mechanisms other than from national government. So provided that continues, there will be a fair amount of success. But saying that, the rural areas of the Western Cape are highly neglected. And that's where opposition parties are taking advantage. Parties like the Patriotic Alliance, like the EFF, they are looking for those votes that don't benefit from the goodwill of the city of Cape Town or from the closer suburbs around the Western Cape provincial government. Because sometimes things only go as far as the mountain, and then beyond the mountain it's slightly different. And if you see in the recent local by-elections, they are slowly but surely drawing on those votes where people don't feel the benefits of a successful provincial government. And that's the worry. That's the worry. So if that's going to be eroded, who then does the DA go in with? They've got to look for a viable partner that has similar priorities in ensuring that this province remains successful. Because the economic viability of this province is what will make it successful. And it's the same with Knysna. We need a stronger economic model to ensure that Knysna is successful. And the same with the province. The province needs to expand its priorities from an economic viability point of view to the smaller towns. And that will make it better. That will give an incentive to people in the rural areas to see, well, this is what the province is actually doing for us. And that's what excites me, is the economic viability and the possibilities to grow this province. But saying that, when it comes to election day and what happens thereafter, it's going to be very, very difficult for the DA to find a viable partner to ensure that this province remains successful, because there are going to have to be sacrifices in any coalition, as happens now here in Knysna. Parties have to make sacrifices, and sometimes those sacrifices are not beneficial to their outcomes, because it might not be the right person, it might not be the right opportunity, etc., and they might lose out on opportunities. So looking forward to a coalition is not something I would want to do.
So we're taking a walk through the streets here in Knysna, basically having the conversation with ordinary residents around the state of Knysna. Now, this is a beautiful touristy town. It's meant to be a pristine location, one which for a very long time the DA was governing, but it lost power, of course, to a coalition involving the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance, and of course the EFF. Since then, things here have, according to residents, gone down to hell in a handbasket, as the expression goes. So let's have that conversation. We're going to stop people on the side of the road and ask the question, that coalition, is it a foreboding? Is it going to be what the Western Cape as a province will look like after the 29th of May? Let's have that conversation on the streets of Knysna. We're stopping South Africans having this conversation on what South Africa can be to her. The first question is, are you registered to vote? Are you excited perhaps to vote?
No, I'm registered.
Okay. Maybe that second question then follows. What can South Africa be? What are the issues that you care about most? What must finally change in this country?
Crime and service delivery.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Let me localize the issue perhaps, because you're mentioning service delivery and crime. We're also talking about Knysna and residents here in Knysna who basically have written into the show and saying, look, things have gone south a bit since the various coalition ructions in this town. The Western Cape faces the prospect of becoming a coalition government after this election. The DA might lose its majority. What do you think residents here in Knysna, or maybe even you, sir, do you view that possibility with foreboding, or maybe are you excited by that prospect?
Well, look, the obvious thing to have is a complete majority, as opposed to coalitions. But it looks as though coalitions are what's happening in South Africa, which is a good thing because we move on from a one-party state. Not so?
I would partially agree with that, but maybe let me steal this final question. And again, it's totally subjective, it's your view. What do you think, if I were to talk to other Knysna residents, including you, have their experience though of a coalition government been? Is it a good, bad or ugly situation?
Not good. Not good at all. Up to a point it was okay, and then things changed a bit, and that's when things started going south.
All right, sir, thank you for your time. Ma'am, sorry to ambush you on the side of the road here in Knysna, but I think we have to chat about the state of the country. An election is coming. Are you registered to vote? Are you excited to vote?
I'm not excited to vote.
Oh, no.
I'm not excited to vote.
Okay. Maybe let me ask the question then that leads from that. Your vote does have some power, though. Like, it can change something, and I'm hoping you might believe that. What can South Africa be? What are the issues that you care about most?
The people here, they do nothing for us. Huh? They do nothing for us. Because every time when it rains, my house is under water. Every time. And that's a big problem for me. See?
Okay. Ma'am, thank you for your time. Thanks. Thank you for your time. I just have 3 questions for you. Number 1, are you registered to vote? Are you excited to vote?
Yes, I'm registered to vote, and I'm quite excited.
All right. Okay. I see that thought process is maybe churning, and I want to maybe ask you a question that leads from that, which is, what can South Africa be? What are the issues that you care about that are prompting you to walk into that voting booth?
It's about seeing change and actually choosing the right leaders that can actually represent our needs and also can help us forge forward a future that speaks to our daily struggles and also seeing us grow as a country and possibly for the better. And especially the main thing is our economy, which is linked to also the issue of jobs, skills, So I certainly look forward to hoping that we have a better caliber of leaders than the current ones.
As I'm listening to you say this, I'm mindful of where South African politics is heading. Here in Knysna, for example, where we're doing this interview, it's a coalition government, and people who have good, bad, ugly interpretations of it, wherever those may be. The Western Cape as a province faces the prospect of a coalition government. The DA, which is in majority, is, said to potentially polling at 48%. And of course, as you know, nationally, there is a very high likelihood of a coalition arrangement. Firstly, what do you think about these coalitions? Have they been, let me keep that phrasing, good, bad, or ugly?
Coalitions, in principle, they are supposed to strengthen democracy because now you have different parties and different interests, which would say the views of the people are more broadly represented, but well on the ground they don't really end up working out, because even the decisions on who goes into bed with who is quite questionable, and so half of the time it's spent in squabbles among political parties and competing interests, and a lot of time is lost in terms of actually focusing on the business of the day and the service delivery. And this is the case throughout the countries. Even political parties themselves, especially the bigger ones, they're not really liking the idea of coalitions, because they often also end up in votes of no confidence, and you see the political instability on a political level also filters down and affects the day-to-day operation of administrations, and then that impacts negatively on service delivery. Yeah.
So maybe as a final question, listening to you describe this, are you looking forward to potentially that national or even provincial coalition arrangement, whatever it looks like? Are you maybe viewing it with trepidation or fear, or maybe, hey, you might even be excited by it? What's your view?
I'm a bit skeptical. I'm not too excited about coalitions, but one thing I'm excited about is seeing the introduction of independent candidates into parliament, and yeah, I'd love to see how that pans out, and especially to see their influence and their role in that space. Yeah.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your day. I'm bothering your morning coffee session. Apologies for that. There we go. Quick sip. But I'm asking a pertinent question. The first one is, are you registered to vote? Are you excited at the prospect of voting in this election?
Yes, I'm registered to vote, but nervous about the outcome, because you know it can go this way or that way, as it always does after the voting. But very positive about South Africa. I've lived around the world, travelled quite a lot. I remain positive because I believe that we all have a common goal, and that is to grow South Africa properly without corruption.
That's right. And maybe you're venturing into my second question, quite naturally so, which is, this is called the What South Africa Can Be tour, and we're asking that very question. What can South Africa be? What are the issues you care about most?
Well, I think we can really become the rainbow nation that we've been promised. People, we are all humans, we're all struggling to survive, and I believe that we should do more for the youth. There's not a lot being done for the youth to encourage them. And I think they're a bit disillusioned at the moment because there's no future for them, and that's what they see. But we know, being older, that there is a future, and we must just unite in this as one country.
Sorry to cut you short there. You're raising issues which I think deserve just one or two more questions. Look, there's a prospect in this election that it's going to become a coalition-type arrangement, including in the province, by the way. The latest polling shows that the current dominant party, the DA, is polling at around 48%, so that may prompt them to seek a coalition partner. And let me be quite honest, we're in Knysna at the moment. This is run by a coalition government, the ANC, PA, and the EFF. The municipality, that is. Now, let's talk about this, because there's some people who perhaps are a little scorned by how things have been in a coalition sense. Let me ask this question of you directly. With Knysna being a coalition municipality, how has that panned out for you guys, and what's the general view?
Yeah, well, as a business owner, I've seen Knysna itself change in that the focus on being a tourist town has really been shifted a bit. But as far as the coalition government is concerned, we can only survive as a coalition where all the race groups are represented fairly and equally, and people are employed because of their skill, not because of who they know. The Boetie system it's just an old government repeated, really.
Maybe as a final question then, because I think you have that experience as someone who lives in Knysna of what a coalition government can look like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. With Knysna being a coalition arrangement at a municipal level, what are your views now, potentially, of the province and national becoming a coalition government? Is there trepidation? Is there excitement? What are your views?
Well, at the moment, we don't really know what the DA is going to do after the election, what the ANC is going to do, or the EFF, or any of the parties. But I do notice that there are some leaders who are that really looking forward, like Herman Mashaba, I'm mentioning names, and a couple else of other people that I know. And on a provincial level, I think really, I don't know, it's touch and go, because when, like for instance, they say Cape Town is the most functioning, well, the Western Province is the most functioning province, but there's still a lot of issues here. And I'm saying, getting back to the youth, we've got to focus on the youth to give them hope for the future. And on a national level, the ANC cannot do it on their own anymore. You know, we've got to find a way through this. Whatever is the best way for the people of South Africa, everybody, that is how I feel about it.
Sir, thank you for your time. Dad, we are talking to South Africans about the upcoming elections, ne?
Okay.
And the question we're asking is, firstly, are you registered to vote? Are you excited to vote?
Yeah, no, I'm registered.
Okay. But then let me ask the question that follows from that, which is, what can South Africa be? What are the issues that you care about the most?
Sure, unemployment, Chief. Unemployment. If they can, they can create more jobs for the young ones, and I'll be happy. Because there's a lot of young kids. They graduate. There's no job for them in South Africa. They're sitting around doing nothing. So yeah.
I want to steal one more question here, if you don't mind.
Okay.
This election, as you know, has the potential to have coalition. In other words, amaqembu ahlukahlukile angena kuhulumende. Knysna is currently under a coalition, ANC, PA, EFF.
Yes.
What has that coalition been like for Knysna? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it need improvement? Are people here positive about our coalitions?
No, not at all. No, it's not working for them. They're fighting each other. You just read on the news. If a party wins, it must just win completely. No collusion. Collusion is not working, Putin.
Yeah. Okay. No, I just wanted your view on this because, as you know, just as a final point, there's the risk, or rather, no, let me not say risk. There's a possibility that national government might become a coalition. There's even a possibility of provincial government being a coalition. If I were to ask people here in Knysna what they think about that potential, what do you think they would say to me?
No, for Chief, on my view, I mean, like, to be honest with you, the collusion is not working. They tried in all these municipalities of the Garden Route. It's the same. They are fighting every day. Even you can read on the news now, the last week news. When they have meetings, they fight each other.
Okay.
So,
Tata, I appreciate your time.
thank you, Putin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Putin.
All right, that wraps up the Knysna edition of the What South Africa Can Be tour in conjunction with the Institute of Race Relations. Now, you heard from certain key figures, people who've actually run this town, who are in council here, who formed civic society organizations that are trying to address the issues faced in Knysna, the very same issues that have stemmed, of course, from the coalition local government. Again, the question that we then posed to people on the ground was, with Knysna being in the state that it's in now, under a coalition government, are they then fearful of coalitions at a provincial level? Are they excited at the prospect of that? And you heard from people, opine on this issue. What do you think of coalitions? That's clearly going to be the future of South African politics. Are you for them, against them? Do you view them with trepidation? Are you excited potentially by them? Keep that conversation going by using hashtag WhatSACanBe. This is a production of the Big Daddy Liberty channel in conjunction with the Institute of Race Relations. Please make sure you follow the Big Daddy Liberty channel on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, or on TikTok, of course. And hey, make sure you follow the Institute of Race Relations. They do excellent work, including this campaign. This has been the What South Africa Can Be tour.